Hello and welcome to the Tell Me Más podcast. I'm your host, Victor Cornejo. So this is just going to be a little video introduction about who I am and this podcast and what this podcast will be about. So again, my name is Victor Cornejo and I'm a proud first generation bilingual Latino born in New York to a Peruvian mother and a Chilean father that immigrated to the United States in the late 1960s. I'm also the father of two college-age kids and also married to my beautiful wife, and we all live here in Dallas, Texas. I've also had the opportunity to enjoy a 20-year career in multicultural and inclusive marketing and advertising that I've really come to love. However, over the last few years, I've really dedicated a lot of time to answer that question of what truly makes me happy and challenges me. And being an avid reader, of course, I went to the self-help section at the bookstore. I listened to endless podcasts about finding your mission and your passions, but I also spent a lot of time simply meditating on it. So did all of that effort lead to some, bright light epiphany moment when I figured it all out? Well, no, absolutely not. And honestly, I've come to the conclusion that, there is something that really makes me feel passionate and excited. And what that is learning. That's especially true when I found myself talking to, interesting people about their stories, their journeys, and, all of those challenges that they faced. Or perhaps it's when I'm learning about something that, someone else is truly passionate about. Maybe that's a particular hobby that they have, or maybe their career. I can't tell you the amount of time I've consumed on content on things that I never knew I had an interest in. But I have found that it's truly fulfilling to sort of open yourself up to that learning as much as you can, especially from others, by simply listening and asking, interesting questions, things that you really want to know and not feeling insecure about asking those questions. So this is why this podcast is titled Tell Me Más. Truly, that is one of my favorite phrases in the entire English language. It's tell me more. Why? Tell me más versus just tell me more. Well, my upbringing and to a certain degree, I guess my career allowed me to learn and consider things through the lens of a first generation Latino born and raised here in the United States. So I view certain topics in perhaps a slightly different way that I don't believe is really fully represented today. And it's certainly not done very accurately. And I simply aspire to take a deeper dive into topics that people like me perhaps didn't learn about while growing up, such as mental health or topics that you didn't really engage with like others did, such as career advice or financial planning. In some cases, that lens is going to be really relevant. In others, it'll be less relevant. And in some topics, it'll be interesting to see where I never even considered I was looking at something from that point of view. So it'll be really interesting to sort of dig into that and see when that occurs. So really the mission of Tell Me Más is to provide a platform for those that are passionate about learning and finding joy in that process. We'll be discussing politics, mental health, relationships, financial planning, career advice, pop culture for sure. We definitely need to be talking about that. And then really, we'll also be debating some issues, that I have a personal view on that I'd really like to have some smart discussions around, but smart debates that, actually unite versus simply divide. And we'll also be talking to people who have achieved amazing levels of success and really want to learn from them on how they achieved that, because we know it wasn't always easy. And so hopefully every episode will be something that we're left with a little more curiosity, a bit entertained, and perhaps even inspired. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you join me on this adventure. Please be sure to like this video and subscribe to catch our upcoming episodes. Thank you.